It was a chaotic morning. The power outage overnight meant our alarm clocks didn't wake us up. I sprang out of bed, feeling the panic set in. Emily was already a whirlwind of motion, rushing through her morning routine. Her job as a personal trainer demanded an early start, unlike my 9 a.m. shift. Emily glanced at the clock and swore under her breath. "I can't believe this. I'm going to be late," she muttered, her hands flying as she pulled on her clothes. "Calm down, Em. It's just one day," I said, trying to soothe her, but she was already halfway out of the bedroom. Normally, she would spend a few minutes checking her emails, but today there was no time. In her rush, she left her laptop on. I decided to shut it down for her. As I reached for the power button, an email subject line caught my eye. "Aloha for a great time." My heart skipped a beat. "What the hell?" I whispered to myself. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the email. Reading the email was like taking a punch to the gut. Emily was planning a trip to Hawaii with another man. I felt my world tilt on its axis. The words blurred as I tried to comprehend what I was seeing. "John, are you okay?" Emily's voice cut through my thoughts as she came back into the room to grab her purse. I snapped the laptop shut. "Yeah, just trying to help you out," I said, forcing a smile. "You left your laptop on." She gave me a hurried kiss on the cheek. "Thanks, love. I've really got to go. See you tonight." I watched her leave, my mind racing. As soon as the door clicked shut, I opened the laptop again, my hands trembling. I had to know more. The email was from someone named Jack. It detailed a romantic getaway planned for the same 2 weeks I'd be on a business trip. Every detail was meticulously planned. Flights, hotel reservations, even dinner spots. The reality hit me like a freight train. Emily was having an affair. I had to sit down. 12 years of marriage, built on trust and shared dreams, now felt like a cruel joke. How could she do this to us? To me, I clicked through more emails. Jack and Emily had been seeing each other for 6 months. They worked together at the health club, their affair hidden in plain sight. My hands clenched into fists as I read their sickeningly sweet exchanges. I needed proof. I copied all the emails onto a thumb drive, my mind already plotting revenge. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a calculated deception, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. By the time I left for work, I had a plan forming. I would learn everything about Jack, every detail of their planned trip, and then I would destroy them both. As I drove to the office, my mind buzzed with anger and hurt. How long had Emily been unhappy? Was it something I did or didn't do? But those thoughts were fleeting. The overriding emotion was anger, and it fueled my every move. Later that night, as we sat down to dinner, I watched Emily closely. She chatted about her day, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "How was your day?" she asked, her eyes bright and innocent. Same old," I replied, masking my emotions with a smile. "Just looking forward to that business trip. It's a big opportunity for us." "Yeah, it is," she said, and I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Relief, maybe? I forced myself to laugh. "What about you? Anything exciting planned while I'm gone?" "Oh, just the usual. Work, maybe catch up with some friends." "Nothing special," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, feeling a cold resolve settle over me. "Sounds good." As we finished dinner and settled into our evening routine, I knew one thing for sure. Emily's little vacation would be her worst nightmare. I would make sure of it. The next few weeks were going to be very interesting. Sitting in my office, I couldn't concentrate. The discovery from the morning haunted me. I kept replaying the last 12 years in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. Emily and I had what seemed like a perfect marriage. How had we ended up here? We met through mutual friends at a dinner party. I remember that night vividly. Emily was wearing a light blue dress that highlighted her brown eyes and her cascading brown hair. She laughed at one of my jokes, a sweet sound that seemed to fill the room. I was instantly drawn to her. "Hi, I'm John," I had said, extending my hand. "Emily," she replied, her hand soft in mine. Our friends must have seen something because they quickly left us alone to talk. We spent the entire evening chatting about everything: work, hobbies, dreams. I found out she was a personal trainer, passionate about yoga and healthy living. I told her about my job in marketing and my love for outdoor activities. "Do you hike?" she asked, her eyes lighting up. "Whenever I can," I answered, matching her enthusiasm. "There's nothing like being out in nature." "Exactly," she said, smiling broadly. "We should go hiking together sometime." And we did. Our first date was a hike up a local trail. We talked and laughed the whole way, the connection between us growing stronger with every step. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was the beginning of something special. Over the years, our bond deepened. We shared a love for fitness and outdoor adventures. Weekends were often spent hiking, biking, or just exploring new places. Emily's dedication to her yoga practice and personal training clients inspired me to be more disciplined in my own life. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. The first time I saw her in a yoga pose, I was amazed. "You're incredible," I said, watching her move with grace and strength. "Thanks," she replied, slightly out of breath but smiling. "It's all about practice and patience." "You make it look easy," I said, feeling a surge of admiration for her. She laughed. "Trust me, it's not. But it's worth it." We got married a couple of years later in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. I remember her walking down the aisle, looking breathtakingly beautiful. I felt like the luckiest man in the world. For 8 years, I believed we were happy. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared dreams. Emily would wake up early to go to the gym, while I prepared breakfast. We would talk about our day over dinner, watch movies, and plan our next adventure. It was a good life. But now, sitting in my office, I wondered if it had all been a lie. Had I missed the signs of her discontent? Were there moments I should have seen but ignored? The door to my office opened, and my colleague Mark walked in. "Hey John, you okay? You seem a bit off today." I forced a smile. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." "What's up?" Mark took a seat across from me. "I was thinking about the presentation for next week. We need to make sure it's perfect." "Right?" I said, trying to focus. "Let's go over it." But even as we discussed work, my mind kept drifting back to Emily. I remembered the times she seemed distant, the nights she worked late at the health club, the weekends she spent away at yoga retreats. Were those the times she was with Jack? That evening, I decided to confront Emily. I needed answers, and I couldn't wait any longer. When I got home, she was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Hey John," she said, looking up with a smile. "How was your day?" "It was fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Sure," she said, sensing something was wrong. She set down the knife and turned to face me. I took a deep breath. "I found an email this morning, from Jack, about a trip to Hawaii." Her face went pale. "John, I can explain." "Explain what, Emily?" I said, my voice rising. "Explain how you've been planning a trip with another man while I'm away on business? Explain how you've been cheating on me for 6 months." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did." "That's not good enough," I said, my anger boiling over. "I thought we were happy. I thought we had a good life together. Was it all a lie?" "No, it wasn't," she said, her voice breaking. "I do love you, John. But somewhere along the way I got lost. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I said, shaking my head. "This wasn't a mistake, Emily. This was a choice. A series of choices. And now I have to make mine." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there in tears. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had, were gone. And I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered past. The morning after discovering the email, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Emily's secret life gnawed at me, demanding my attention. After a restless night, I decided I needed to know the full extent of her affair. Sitting at the kitchen table with a strong cup of coffee, I opened Emily's laptop, heart pounding in my chest. Navigating to her inbox, I saw the folder labeled, Trips. My fingers hesitated over the mouse, but my curiosity and need for answers pushed me forward. I clicked, and the folder opened, revealing a series of emails between Emily and Jack. Each email I read felt like another dagger to the heart. They talked about their meetings, their plans, their feelings. It was all there, laid out in cold, stark text. Their affair had been going on for 6 months, right under my nose. One email stood out, detailing their first encounter. From Jack to Emily. Subject: last night. Hey Emily, last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. You're everything I've been looking for. Can't wait to see you again. Jack. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breathing. The betrayal felt overwhelming. But I wasn't done yet. I had to know more about Jack. This man who had inserted himself into my life, my marriage. A few more clicks, and I found his profile on the health club's website. Jack was a personal trainer just like Emily. He looked the part, fit, confident, with an easy smile that probably charmed many women. I dug deeper, finding more personal information and their work schedules. Later that evening, as I sat on the couch, Emily joined me, oblivious to my discoveries. She nestled close, her familiar scent stirring conflicting emotions in me. I decided to test the waters. How was your day? I asked, keeping my tone casual. It was good, she replied, her eyes not meeting mine. Just the usual clients. How about yours? Busy, I said, watching her closely. Ran into an old friend today. Remember Mike from college? She nodded, but her attention seemed elsewhere. I decided to push a bit more. Have you seen that new trainer at your gym? Jack. I think his name is. Her body stiffened almost imperceptibly. Yeah, he's been there for a while now. Why? Oh, just curious. I heard he's really good at what he does. Emily forced a smile. Yeah, he is. The rest of the evening passed in a tense silence. Emily retreated to our bedroom early, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I knew I had to confront her eventually, but I needed to prepare. The next day, I called my old college buddy, Will. We hadn't spoken in years, but I needed his help. Will, it's John. I need a favor. John? Wow, it's been ages. What's up? I can't explain over the phone. Can we meet for lunch? Sure, man. How about tomorrow at noon? Sounds good. Thanks, Will. The following day, we met at a small cafe, far from my usual haunts. Will looked different, older, more worn, but he was still the same reliable friend I remembered. What's going on, John? He asked, concern evident in his eyes. I took a deep breath. Emily's having an affair. I need your help to gather evidence and figure out my next move. Will listened as I recounted everything, the emails, the affair, the betrayal. When I finished, he leaned back, nodding slowly. I'm sorry, man. That's tough. What do you need me to do? I need information on Jack. Anything that could help me understand who he is and what his weaknesses are. Will agreed to help, and we spent the next few days digging into Jack's background. We discovered he had a history of dating married women, a pattern that disgusted me but also gave me a potential angle for revenge. One night, as Emily slept, I quietly installed a small surveillance camera in our living room. I needed concrete proof, something undeniable. The following week, my efforts paid off. The camera captured a conversation between Emily and Jack. They spoke about their upcoming trip to Hawaii, their excitement, their plans. It was sickening to watch, but it gave me what I needed. With the evidence in hand, I knew it was time to confront Emily. I couldn't live in this deceit any longer. The next evening, as we sat down for dinner, I looked across the table at her, my heart heavy with sorrow and anger. Emily, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. She looked up, sensing the gravity in my tone. What's wrong, John? I know about Jack, I said, watching the color drain from her face. I know about the affair, the emails, the trip to Hawaii. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes filled with tears as the reality of her actions hit her. Why, Emily? Why did you do this to us? I demanded, my voice cracking. I'm so sorry, John, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you, but I got caught up in something I couldn't control. That's not good enough, I replied, my anger flaring. You made choices, Emily. Choices that have destroyed our marriage. She reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away. Please, John, give me a chance to make it right. I shook my head, standing up from the table. I don't think I can. Not after this. Leaving her there, sobbing at the table, I walked out of the house, my heart heavy with the weight of her betrayal. The life we had built was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be put back together. The confrontation with Emily left me raw and broken. Her betrayal was a wound that wouldn't heal easily. As the days passed, my anger transformed into a cold, determined resolve. I needed to do more than just confront her. I needed to make them both pay for what they had done. The seeds of a revenge plan began to take root in my mind. I started by gathering more information. Using the surveillance camera, I recorded their interactions whenever Jack visited our home. Each recording was another piece of the puzzle, another brick in the wall I was building to trap them both. But I needed more than just videos. I needed something that would hit them hard and leave a lasting impact. One evening, I met up with Will at a secluded bar far from the city. I chose the spot deliberately to ensure our conversation wouldn't be overheard. We sat in a dimly lit corner, nursing our drinks. Thanks for meeting me, Will, I said, taking a sip of my beer. No problem, John. What's the latest? He asked, leaning in. I've got recordings of Emily and Jack. They're planning to go to Hawaii while I'm on my business trip. I want to ruin that trip and make sure they face consequences they won't forget, I explained. Will nodded slowly. What do you have in mind? I need to plant something in their luggage that will get them arrested. Drugs, maybe. It has to be something that'll cause a major scene, I said, my voice low and steady. Will's eyes widened. John, that's serious stuff. Are you sure about this? Positive. They need to learn that actions have consequences, I replied, the resolve in my voice leaving no room for doubt. Will sighed. All right, I'll help, but we need to be careful. If we get caught, we could end up in jail. I know the risks, I said, grateful for his loyalty. We need to plan this meticulously. No mistakes. Over the next few days, we put our plan into motion. I purchased disposable cell phones and a small laptop to avoid leaving any digital traces. We communicated only through these means, ensuring our actions couldn't be tracked back to us. I also bought wireless cameras and bugs to place around the house, gathering more evidence and learning their routines. One evening, as Emily was out with friends, I installed the cameras in the living room and bedroom, the places where they spent the most time together. I knew it was risky, but the need for revenge outweighed my fear of getting caught. With everything set up, I turned to the next step, acquiring the drugs. Will reached out to some old contacts, and within a week, he had what we needed. We met again at the same secluded bar. Here's the stuff, Will said, sliding a small bag across the table. Be careful with it. Thanks, Will. I owe you, I said, pocketing the bag. Just make sure you know what you're doing, he replied, a hint of worry in his voice. Back at home, I waited for the right moment. Emily and Jack were planning to leave the day after my business trip started. I had to act fast. A few days before my departure, I found the opportunity one was looking for. Emily was at work, and Jack was out of town. I carefully opened her suitcase, already half-packed for their trip. With steady hands, I concealed the drugs in a hidden compartment, making sure they wouldn't be discovered until it was too late. I repeated the process with Jack's bag, which I had access to thanks to the surveillance recordings showing where he kept his spare key. The final piece of the plan involved tipping off airport security. Using one of the disposable phones, I called an old friend, Jasper, who worked at the TSA. Jasper, it's John. I need a favor, I said, keeping my voice steady. John? What's going on? He asked, surprised. I have some information about 2 passengers traveling to Hawaii next week. They're carrying drugs. I need you to make sure they're caught, I explained. That's serious, John. Are you sure? Jasper's tone was cautious. Absolutely. I can't explain everything, but I need your help. Please, I pleaded. After a long pause, Jasper agreed. All right, I'll take care of it. But you owe me one. Thank you, Jasper. I owe you big time, I said, relief flooding through me. With everything in place, I left for my business trip, my heart pounding with anticipation. The flight was uneventful, but my mind was racing with thoughts of what was about to unfold. As soon as we landed, I checked into the hotel and turned off my phone, pretending I had lost it during the trip. Later that evening, I called home using the hotel phone. Honey, I made a foolish mistake. I left my phone in the cab. I won't be reachable until I get a new one, I said, leaving a message for Emily. The next day, I went about my meetings, my mind half focused on the clients and half on what was happening back home. By evening, I received a call from Jasper. It's done. They were arrested at the airport, he said simply. Thank you, Jasper. I can't tell you how much this means to me, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. That night, I finally felt a sense of closure. Emily and Jack had been caught, their plans shattered. I knew the fallout would be severe, but they had brought it upon themselves. My revenge was complete, and I could finally move on with my life, leaving the betrayal behind. The days leading up to my business trip were filled with tension. Emily moved around the house with a carefree air, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I watched her closely, pretending everything was normal, while my mind was consumed with the intricate details of the plan. One evening, as Emily and I were having dinner, I decided to subtly gather more information. So, any plans while I'm away? I asked, keeping my tone casual as I took a sip of my wine. Emily looked up from her plate, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. Oh, just the usual. Work, maybe a yoga retreat. Nothing special. I nodded, suppressing the anger bubbling beneath the surface. That sounds nice. I hope you have a good time. As we continued to eat, my mind drifted to the final steps I needed to take. After dinner, Emily excused herself to prepare for an early morning session at the gym. I used the opportunity to double-check the hidden cameras and microphones I had installed around the house. Everything was working perfectly, capturing every moment between Emily and Jack. The next day, while Emily was at work, I decided to call Will to finalize our plans. We met at our usual spot, a secluded bar far from prying eyes. Everything is set, I told Will, sliding into the booth. I've hidden the drugs in their luggage. Now we just need to make sure they get caught. Will looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. You're really going through with this, huh? I have to, I replied, my voice steady. They need to face the consequences of their actions. We discussed the final details, ensuring there were no loose ends. I left the bar feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread. The trap was set, and now all I had to do was wait. The night before my trip, Emily seemed unusually affectionate. She snuggled close to me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. I'm going to miss you, she murmured, her breath warm against my neck. I forced a smile, wrapping my arm around her. I'll miss you too, Em. But it's only 2 weeks. We'll be back together before you know it. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with emotion. I love you, John. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then the image of her with Jack flashed in my mind, hardening my resolve. I love you too, I lied, kissing her softly. The next morning, Emily drove me to the airport. As we said our goodbyes, I held her close, knowing it would be the last time I'd feel her in my arms. Have a safe trip, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thanks, Em. Take care, I replied, pulling away reluctantly. As I watched her drive off, I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. This was it. The plan was in motion. Once I landed at my destination and checked into the hotel, I called Jasper using one of the disposable phones. Jasper, it's John. Everything is set. They'll be at the airport tomorrow morning. Flight to Hawaii, I said, my voice steady. Got it. I'll make sure they're stopped, Jasper replied. The next day, I went through my meetings, barely able to concentrate. My mind was fixated on what was happening back home. By evening, I finally got the call I was waiting for. "It's done. They've been arrested," Jasper said simply. "Thank you, Jasper. I owe you," I replied, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. That night, I checked my email and found several messages from Emily, her father, and even the DEA agent. I ignored them all, knowing the chaos I had unleashed. The next morning, I called my boss. "I'm sorry, but there's been a family emergency. I need to head back home." "Of course, John. Take all the time you need," he replied, concern evident in his voice. I booked the earliest flight back and arrived home that evening. As I walked through the door, the house felt eerily quiet. I knew Emily wouldn't be back for a long time. Sitting at the kitchen table, I finally allowed myself to feel a sense of closure. Emily and Jack's betrayal had cost them dearly, and now I could move on with my life. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I changed the locks, packed up Emily's belongings, and arranged for them to be sent to her parents' house. I also contacted a lawyer to start the divorce proceedings. As I watched the movers take away the last of Emily's things, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The trap had been set and it had worked perfectly. Now I could finally close this painful chapter and start anew. The morning of Emily and Jack's flight, I felt a strange sense of calm. Everything was in place and now it was just a matter of time. As I sat in my hotel room, my mind replayed the events that had led to this moment. My phone buzzed with a message from Jasper. "There at the airport. I'll update you soon." I took a deep breath, trying to focus on the work in front of me. The meetings had gone well, but I found it impossible to concentrate. My thoughts kept drifting back to Emily and Jack, picturing their faces when they realized they were caught. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Jasper. "It's done," he said, his voice low. "They've been arrested. The drugs were found in both their bags." "Thank you, Jasper. I owe you," I replied, a sense of relief washing over me. After hanging up, I sat back, letting the reality of the situation sink in. Emily and Jack were likely being processed at the airport. Their dream trip to Hawaii turned into a nightmare. It was exactly what they deserved. I decided to check my email. As expected, there were several frantic messages from Emily and her father. I opened the one from her father first. From Emily's father. To John. Subject: Emergency. John. Emily has been arrested at the airport. They found drugs in her luggage. This is a mistake. She's never been involved with drugs. We need your help. Please call me as soon as you get this. Best, Edward. I closed the email, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. Next, I opened Emily's message. From Emily. To John. Subject: Help, John. Something terrible has happened. I've been arrested at the airport. They found drugs in my bag, but I swear I don't know how they got there. Please, you have to help me. I'm so scared. Emily. I deleted both emails and turned off my laptop. There was no point in responding. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. That evening, I received a call from Agent DeFranco of the DEA. "Mr. Johnson, this is Agent DeFranco. I'm calling about your wife, Emily Johnson. She's been arrested on drug charges at the airport." I feigned shock. "What? That's impossible. Emily would never be involved with drugs." "I understand this is difficult to hear, but the evidence is clear. We found a significant amount of illegal substances in her luggage and in the luggage of her companion, Jack Miller," Agent DeFranco explained. I don't know what to say. This is unbelievable," I stammered, maintaining the facade. "We're conducting a thorough investigation. In the meantime, you might want to speak to her lawyer," he suggested. "Of course. Thank you for letting me know," I replied, ending the call. The next day, I flew back home, eager to put the final pieces of my plan into action. Upon arriving, I drove straight to the house, where I was greeted by a flurry of messages on the answering machine. Most were from Emily and her father, pleading for my help. Ignoring the messages, I contacted a locksmith to change the locks on the house. Emily would no longer have access to our home. I also called a moving company to pack up her belongings and deliver them to her parents' place. The following morning, I met with Emily's lawyer, Mr. Bennett. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming in," he greeted me. "We need to discuss Emily's case." "I still can't believe this is happening," I said, shaking my head. "Emily has never been involved with drugs. There must be some mistake." "The evidence is quite damning," Mr. Bennett admitted, "but we'll do our best to defend her. She's claiming she had no knowledge of the drugs." "Do you believe her?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. This whole situation is so out of character for her." Mr. Bennett nodded sympathetically. "We'll do everything we can. In the meantime, it might be best if you limit your contact with her to avoid any potential complications." "Understood," I replied, grateful for the advice. After leaving the lawyer's office, I drove to the jail where Emily was being held. Despite my resolve, I felt a pang of sorrow as I saw her through the glass partition, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, looking utterly defeated. "John, thank God you're here," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Emily," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "What happened?" "I don't know. I swear I didn't put those drugs in my bag. Jack must have done it without me knowing," she pleaded. "Why were you going to Hawaii with him?" I asked, my voice hardening. "It was a mistake, John. I'm so sorry. I love you. Please, you have to believe me," she sobbed. "I don't know if I can," I said quietly. "You've broken my trust in the worst possible way. Please, John, help me get out of here. I'll do anything to make it right," she begged. "I'll talk to your lawyer and see what can be done," I replied, standing up. "But I need time to process all of this." As I walked away, her cries echoed in my ears, but I steeled myself against the guilt. This was the price she had to pay for her betrayal. In the following days, I finalized the divorce papers and sent them to Emily's lawyer. The moving company packed up her belongings, and I arranged for them to be delivered to her parents' house. I also installed a new security system to ensure she couldn't return. With everything in place, I felt a sense of closure. Emily and Jack were paying the price for their actions, and I could finally move forward with my life, free from their deceit and betrayal. The days following Emily and Jack's arrest were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. With Emily out of the house, it felt eerily quiet. The absence of her presence was both a relief and a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered our lives. I spent the first few days finalizing the details of our separation. The locksmith had changed the locks, and the moving company had packed and delivered Emily's belongings to her parents' house. It was a painful but necessary step to reclaim my space and begin the healing process. One evening, as I sat in the living room, the phone rang. It was Edward, Emily's father. "John, can we talk?" Edward's voice was heavy with emotion. "Sure, Edward," I replied, bracing myself for the conversation. "I don't know what to say. Emily is devastated. She claims she had no idea about the drugs," Edward began, his voice shaking. "We're doing everything we can to get her out, but it's a mess." "I understand, Edward," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But you have to understand, she was unfaithful. She lied to me for months." "I know, John, and I'm not excusing her behavior. I'm just asking for your help, for her sake," Edward pleaded. "I'm sorry, Edward. I've done all I can. I've spoken to her lawyer, but I can't do more than that. She made her choices," I said firmly. There was a long pause before Edward spoke again. "I understand. Thank you, John." After hanging up, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. I had loved Emily deeply, but her betrayal had cut too deep to ignore. I knew I had to move on, but it wouldn't be easy. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss the divorce proceedings. We went over the details, ensuring everything was in order for a swift and fair separation. As I signed the papers, I felt a sense of finality. This was the end of our marriage, but it was also a new beginning for me. Returning to work was a welcome distraction. My colleagues had heard about my family emergency, but I kept the details vague. They respected my privacy, allowing me to immerse myself in projects and meetings. The company was on the brink of securing several major clients, and my focus was crucial. One afternoon, my boss, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office. "John, I just wanted to check in on you. How are you holding up?" he asked, his tone genuinely concerned. "I'm doing all right, Mr. Thompson. Just taking it one day at a time," I replied, appreciating his concern. "I understand. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. And I have some good news. We've secured the deals with the clients you were working on. Your efforts played a big part in that," he said with a smile. "That's great to hear. Thank you," I said, feeling a glimmer of pride amidst the chaos of my personal life. As the days turned into weeks, the divorce was finalized. Emily and I had agreed to a fair 50-50 split of our assets, and she was responsible for her legal fees. It was a straightforward process, but the emotional toll was significant. One evening, as I was sorting through some old photos, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered. "John, it's Emily," she said, her voice trembling. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I just wanted to apologize again. For everything. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I need you to know how sorry I am," she said, her voice breaking. "I appreciate the apology, Emily, but it doesn't change what happened. We're done. I need to move on with my life," I replied, my voice firm. "I understand. I needed to say it," she said softly. "Goodbye, Emily," I said, ending the call. Putting the phone down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the closure I needed to truly move forward. Months passed, and life slowly returned to a new normal. The company continued to thrive, and I was promoted to a higher position, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The pain of the past began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and determination. One evening, I was at a networking event when I met Leona. She was intelligent, kind, and had a sense of humor that immediately put me at ease. We talked for hours, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. As we exchanged contact information, she smiled warmly. "It was great talking to you, John. Let's do this again sometime." "I'd like that, Leona," I replied, feeling a genuine sense of anticipation. As I walked back to my car, I realized that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. Emily and Jack's betrayal had been a painful chapter, but it was over. The future was wide open, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next.